North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. Greetings, my name is John David Wells. What do we do here? We report the news, honestly, fairly. We analyze the news for fact and bias. We point out both. We make commentary. That is not the news. Simply my opinion, just as valuable as yours. And so we debate. Two ways to do that. You can call me on the telephone, 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. Operator is standing by. Or you can join us on our chat room. That's available at Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. So today is opening day of the United States Congress. The Senate has pretty much done their business. VP Harris has presided over the opening day of the United States Senate, the first woman to ever do so. In the House of Representatives, things have been a bit more complex. Specifically, what is happening is that there are now two votes for Speaker. Both votes failed Kevin McCarthy's ascension to the speakership. That is significant. The second vote is currently going on. At this particular moment, Hakeem Jeffries, who is the leader of the Democrat caucus, has actually won the first vote for Speaker. He will not be the Speaker of the House because his party does not have the majority of seats in that body. As we go through this second vote, McCarthy is currently leading with 153 votes. I'll let you take a look at this courtesy of CNN, of C-SPAN, rather. You can see that Kevin McCarthy currently has 153 votes, and Hakeem Jeffries, the Democrat, has 152 votes. Jim Jordan has 16 votes so far. He does not want the job. Indeed, before the second vote, Jim Jordan immediately jumped up and said all the things necessary to both nominate Kevin McCarthy as a speaker candidate and then gave a great speech about it. Following that, Matt Gaetz stood up. He is a member of the Freedom Caucus, and he immediately said, the person that I want to nominate for the speaker is Jim Jordan. Jim Jordan does not want the job, and Matt Gaetz made an impassioned speech to say, well, you know what? That may be the guy who needs to have the job, someone who doesn't actually want it. He also pointed out that Jim Jordan had put out more very important policy ideas than Kevin McCarthy had. And that resonated with some voters, as now Jim Jordan has 17 votes. Last time, there were 19 votes for other people in nomination for the speakership of the United States House, but they can only lose. When I say they, I'm talking about Republican and Representative Kevin McCarthy of California. He can only lose 5 votes because the 218 majority, or the actual need to win, is 218 votes. There are now 222 votes available for the Republican Party, and so the magic number is 5. Any number over 5 votes for other people guarantees that Kevin McCarthy will not indeed be Speaker. As we come to this conversation, please understand also that they do not accumulate the votes. In other words, there is a first vote, and if someone fails, they start over from 0, as opposed to leaving those votes in place. Therefore, this could go on over and over and over. Some 130 votes were taken years and years and years ago. That's not going to happen this time. Someone will step up to the plate and make some kind of an impassioned deal, whether it's for Kevin McCarthy or whether it's for someone else. Kevin McCarthy may indeed stand down at some point and say, okay, if I'm not the Speaker of the House, then let somebody else do it. I doubt very sincerely that he would do that. Steve Scalise of Louisiana just stood up and cast his vote for Kevin McCarthy. And once again, he is the actual majority leader in the House of Representatives. Well, actually, no, he may be the majority whip. The leadership of the Republican Party is somewhat sketchy to me at this particular moment. That's my fault. That's not theirs. They have certainly made their choices. They've made their choices very, very plainly, and I'm talking about the Republican Party when it comes to their leadership. And so what we're doing is we're listening to this and watching this and wondering what's going to happen. This could take all day. What can also happen in this particular case is someone can then request a recess whereby the conferences, the Democrat and Republican conferences, would then be able to go back, huddle up, and try to figure something out. In this particular case, what you need to keep in mind is that has not been successful. That has, as a matter of fact, that turned into a shouting match, profanity inclusive, the last time they got together. As a matter of fact, I've got an article about that. Let me see if I can bring this to you, courtesy of Fox News. Representative Lauren Boebert of Colorado muttered, "This is BS," except she said the word under her breath during a House GOP conference meeting today regarding House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy's bid for speakership. The comment, which a Boebert spokesman told Fox News Digital was not yelled or said into a microphone, came this morning, as McCarthy delivered a speech aimed to unite the party ahead of the leadership vote. That happened on the floor of the United States House. McCarthy faces opposition for Speaker from Boebert, Matt Gaetz, and members of the House Freedom Caucus, who claim he has not proven to be worthy of being the Speaker in the new Republican majority. Representative Bob Good, who's a Republican from Virginia, said the House Republican meeting was hostile, and the McCarthy's attempt to persuade hardline Republicans to vote for him fell flat. Quote, "The meeting was very hostile. I don't think it did anything to persuade those who are inclined to vote against Kevin McCarthy." Good, by the way, is one of 5 Republicans who said they will not vote for a speakership for Kevin McCarthy. House Freedom Caucus Chairman Scott Perry of Pennsylvania, who has already indicated he would likely oppose McCarthy, left little doubt he would vote for someone else. Quote, "In his 14 years of Republican leadership, McCarthy has repeatedly failed to demonstrate any desire to meaningfully change the status quo in Washington." That is true. Despite our deep reservations that we have continued to work in earnest to find a path forward with Kevin McCarthy, knowing that this crucial moment would come. The statement from Perry follows a letter he sent to McCarthy along with 8 members of the House Freedom Caucus that detailed their plan for the structure of the party leadership. Perry added today that he would support McCarthy if he heeds to their demands, which is a little bit of a biased biased statement there. Now, you have to keep something in mind. This morning, virtually everybody on Fox News have been talking about how what we have here is chaos and what we have here is damaging Republicans. And if Kevin McCarthy isn't the leader, then there's going to be significant political power lost, and on and on and on, which is just plain bias. The objective of news reporting is to do what I'm doing, which is to tell you what's going on, and not to advocate for one speaker or one person for speaker or for someone else for speaker. I was absolutely shocked that this actually played out this way. I was very, very sure that Kevin McCarthy was going to be a shoo-in, and that didn't happen. As a matter of fact, not only did it not happen, it has been a resounding failure, and this second ballot is also a resounding failure for Kevin McCarthy. Now, I have a few things here to share with you regarding my own personal observations on this. Thing number 1, the Republican Party has a huge problem. They have lost credibility with the American people because when it comes time for them to lead, they find ways to avoid it. Perfect example is Obamacare. 73 times the Republican Party said that they would vote to overturn Obamacare when they returned to power. When that happened, the House of Representatives muffed it. They didn't have a plan ready, and they were not able to turn away Obamacare. And so this is a perfect example of what the Republican Party does. The Republican Party facilitates Democrat policy. And that has been laid at the feet of people that are called rhinos or Republicans in name only. And I've got to say that those people have badly damaged the Republican brand. And one of those people, at least as far as the Freedom Caucus is concerned, is Kevin McCarthy. Now, like I said, I was very sure that Kevin McCarthy was going to be the speaker. That might yet happen. But with every vote that goes by, pressure both increases on the Freedom Caucus and increases on Kevin McCarthy to stand down, to stand aside for someone else. Who would that someone else be? I don't have any idea. Many people say that Jim Jordan would be the perfect Speaker of the House, but Jim Jordan doesn't want that job. Why? He wants to be the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, and he will very likely be that person. Let's take a look while we're at this here. Let's take a look at what's going on with the vote. And it is continuing to go on. 199 votes now for Hakeem Jeffries and 188 for Kevin McCarthy. So what I'm trying to tell you is as follows: that Kevin McCarthy is someone who has been called by members of the Freedom Caucus a member of the Washington cartel. For those people that use somewhat less, shall we say, polite terms, that would be the swamp. And I really don't see, just in my personal opinion, how people could be dissuaded from that, given the fact that the Republican Party has been there the entire time. And indeed, we have seen all of this miscreancy go on in our government for the last 2 years. And you can stretch this back as far as you want to. That idea that Republican intransigence, when it comes to wanting to lead, actually lead this nation, you can go back as far as you want to. These people are losers, in my humble opinion. Now, I'm not talking about the speaker vote or what have you. I'm not talking about what's going on right now. What's going on right now is not chaotic. What's going on right now is not damaging the Republican Party. What's going on right now is a forced reconciling or a forced reckoning for the Republican Party by people who know for a fact that the Republican Party does not serve the people of the United States, and indeed should. And they just don't do it. They just don't do it. For whatever reason, they just don't think that their leadership is either worthy or necessary or any of that. Those are my thoughts. What are yours? Call me 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. Give me a call or show up right here on the chat room. By the way, I was on Twitter earlier today. If you go to @TheWellsReport, you can see what I have said over the last bits of time here. It's a bit more strident than what I've shared with you on this broadcast. But what I will assure you of is this: the Republican Party has a very serious problem. Because the Republican Party has a serious problem, Kevin McCarthy has a serious problem ascending to the speakership. This is the Wells Report. We'll be back with more in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Thanks very much for being a part of our broadcast. Our telephone number, 817-379-2172. It has just happened. The vote, the second vote for Speaker of the House has just concluded, and Representative Kevin McCarthy did not have the votes. A third vote will be gavelled in with nomination speeches, etc. We will cover this as long as this takes, or at least until someone decides to call for a recess so that the Republican conference can back away and try to figure something out. We'll be doing all of that here on the Wells Report today. This is a huge news story. There are other news stories, in fact, involving the safety for the Buffalo Bills. He is someone who has Damar Hamlin. Is someone who is now fighting for his life. He is currently in ICU after suffering a cardiac arrest in last night's game in the first quarter. The NFL has come up with a statement on that, and we'll be covering that story a little bit later on. But Damar Hamlin is still in critical condition. Last we heard, he was on a respirator, and we will hope that he can recover. The circumstance there has to do with the fact that that he is it depends on how much time he lay on the field before they were able to get his heart back started again, and we're hoping that he's going to be okay. Talking a little bit about this speaker vote, it is one of these things that lets you know that there are indeed biases in what is normally thought of as right-wing news articles or news sources. There is bias. The bias is toward Kevin McCarthy. Kevin McCarthy represents the status quo ante. And so there are people on the chat room that say things like, it bothers me that McCarthy was part of the Boehner-Ryan group. It does. It bothers me as well. We've also heard some nice words, by the way. It's very, very sweet that people have missed the broadcast over the holiday break. I have missed you as well. Let's see who else is speaking. I don't mind it taking several votes to determine who the speaker will be, but the leftist media will go haywire about it, misleading ignorant citizens about it, etc. That is correct. That's why I do this broadcast. While I can't actually intervene with everybody who refuses to pay attention or provide the stewardship of this nation that our Constitution and Bill of Rights demands, I can certainly at least put the information out there, and that's what we're going to be doing. Let's see. Will NP, speaking of gaveling, will NP stick around to pass it or quit before that? I don't know what you're talking about, Gary. Please clarify. I would appreciate it. Let's see what else. Then there are people talking about Damar Hamlin. Prayers aloft, please. Pray for this young man. I was watching the game, says Kelly. It was the weirdest thing. He made a tackle, stood up, and then just fell backwards. I thought at first he was flopping. So sad. Well, it is very sad. And what people are saying is that the hit his heart at exactly the right time. It's only a few milliseconds that your heart is vulnerable to a strike like that. And that is apparently what happened. Like I said, we'll be talking a little bit about that later on in the broadcast. But first, the breaking news. Kevin McCarthy is now going to have to wait at least for 3 votes before he becomes Speaker of the House. There is a vast majority of people that have voted for Kevin McCarthy, but they need 218. And so far, Kevin McCarthy only has 203. 19 people voted against him the first time. 19 people voted against him the second time. They have work to do. John Thomas is asking a procedural question. We'll get to that after we finish this break. At the bottom of the hour, we'll allow folks to have a little bit of time to put their news in if they happen to be taking this broadcast for their radio station. This is the Wells Report. My name, John David Wells. Thanks very much for joining us today. Back with more of the news in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Breaking news today, Kevin McCarthy has failed in his second attempt to become Speaker of the House. There will be a third vote, as far as we know, and we will see what is going on. Many people say that Kevin McCarthy is losing his votes based on the fact that he has refused to compromise with the Freedom Caucus until it became evident that he was not going to have a smooth ascension to the speakership. Many people are saying that might be something that disqualifies him from that post. We shall watch as this story unfolds. In the chat room, John Thomas has asked a procedural question. Why does this election not follow the same rules that got these critters elected to Congress in the first place? In an election of the people, when no one earns a majority on the first vote, then a runoff between the top two candidates takes place to elect a winner. Why is this basic principle not in play here? Is this the House of Representatives, or is this the College of Cardinals? Great question. There is an answer. House Republican leader McCarthy has failed to secure enough votes twice now to become the Speaker of the House. That heightens the tumult around the new GOP majority. But this is a USA Today article that I'm reading from, and that points out bias. There is no tumult. This is the process that has to go when you talk about the future of the Republican Party. It is absolutely not up for debate that the Republican Party is much more comfortable facilitating Democrat policies than actually coming up with their own. We've talked about that numerous times here on the Wells Report, and you've heard it yourself. So now what we have is a situation here where the Republican Party has got to figure out what it wants to be when it grows up. Will it be an aggressive leading party, or will it continue to be a handmaiden for Democrat policy, which is what it has been in as far back as you want to go? I mean, I have seen this. It is one reason why I am no longer a Republican. I am a constitutional independent. And the reason is because somebody needs to fight for the Constitution and Bill of Rights of these United States. It should be the Democrat Party that does that as well, but they've long since turned their back on not just the Constitution, not just the Bill of Rights, but America in general, as they pursue this socialist fantasy of a politician's playground for the United Socialist States of America. That is not going to occur. That being said, they are unified. They have all voted for Hakeem Jeffries, the Democrat leader, twice. As a matter of fact, he has garnered more votes for Speaker than Kevin McCarthy has, twice already. The background, by the way, is what's going on. We want to thank C-SPAN for allowing us coverage, the video coverage that you've been seeing. The Speaker is a powerful role in line behind the Vice President to succeed the President should the Commander-in-Chief be incapacitated. But the more prominent authority that the Speaker wields is controlling the agenda and committee assignments that shape legislation in Congress. With Republicans having regained the majority in the November midterms, Kevin McCarthy was in line and is still in line as he is the Republican leader in that House. But some Republicans have publicly stated that they will not be supporting the California representative for Speaker, jeopardizing his shot at the gavel. Representative Andy Biggs is challenging McCarthy for the powerful leadership role, and he earned 10 votes on the first ballot. 9 other lawmakers voted for others. Of the 212 elected Democrats, all voted for Hakeem Jeffries, the House Democrat leader. So prior to the start of a new Congress, both parties hold a private meeting where they elect party leadership. And this takes place before January 3rd, the official start of the new term. This would be the 118th Congress. A candidate only needs a majority of votes from their respective party to win nomination for the private meeting of leadership. Even if a colleague votes against a candidate in the private caucus, the party typically sticks together to back a nominee for the House on the House floor. That has not happened this time. This, by the way, is according to Matt Glassman, who's a senior fellow at Georgetown University's Government Affairs Institute. However, when the whole House votes, just a few votes in opposition to a candidate from their own party could cost them the speakership. As I said, this has happened twice. A third vote is coming up. that creates a scenario where people could dissent. A very small faction could stop you from winning on the floor in your own party. In this case, it's only 5 votes. The Republicans have 222 members that are in leadership. 222. That means that if it takes 218 votes to become the speaker. And so with those 5 votes, the speakership of Kevin McCarthy is at least in jeopardy and may be facing failure. The clerk of the House from the prior Congress gavels in the opening session and presides as speaker until one is elected. The clerk first calls for a quorum to establish enough members are present to conduct business and then proceeds immediately. So as we talked about, 218 votes are needed. In the next Congress, all 434 members, one fewer than 435 because Virginia Representative Donald McEachin recently died. A successor has yet to be chosen. If the results, for example, are 216 votes for McCarthy, 212 for a Democrat candidate, and 6 representatives vote for somebody else, the 216 votes would not be the majority of 434 needed for the speakership. However, if those 6 representatives do not vote for someone else, they don't count toward the total votes needed. In other words, you'll hear the term being voted for by name. And so if they do not vote, then that would secure the speakership for McCarthy if, say, for example, the Freedom Caucus members that are devoutly against Kevin McCarthy, if they continue to hold those up or just continue to play politics and then not vote. That would damage their standing as members of the Freedom Caucus and certainly would damage their standing in the Republican faction that believes that the Republican Party has failed the American people. That is something that is certainly on the table. Glassman said that it's often used by as a tactic by speaker candidates who convince their colleagues to, in essence, abstain as a compromise between voting for another candidate and supporting their candidacy. That's a viable strategy. Okay, what else can happen? What if a candidate does not get the majority votes? The first ballot fails to provide a speaker, which has happened. Lawmakers will continue to vote until a candidate receives a majority. Members can vote for different candidates each time. It's not common that there's more than one ballot. It has happened. This is where history rears its ugly head. In 1923, or political history, shall I say, in 1923, it took multiple ballots, 9 over the course of 2 months, to elect a speaker. On 3 occasions prior to the Civil War, a speaker was not elected on the first ballot. In one instance, it took 133 ballots over a period of 2 months. As a last resort, lawmakers can adopt a resolution that would elect a speaker by a plurality or by ranked choice voting instead of a simple majority. Glassman said that McCarthy needs at least 213 votes because the 212 House Democrats are likely going to all back their party leader, which they have done twice. That is Representative Hakeem Jeffries. Of the remaining 9 GOP lawmakers who have expressed reservations about supporting McCarthy, the California Republican will need some combination of votes for him, present vote or no votes. The important thing functionally is that if nothing else happens in the House until they have a speaker. Unless the speaker is elected, there won't be anything else going on. A lot of people, including the swearing in of the elects for Congress. The most important thing functionally is nothing else happens in the House until they have a speaker. They won't be able to adopt rules, assign committees, or consider legislation until the speaker is chosen. Lawmakers traditionally vote for their party nominee, but in some recent years, they've chosen to vote present or not vote at all. This is sort of a modern thing in the last 10 years, said Glassman. We have had members of the majority party threatening not to vote for their party's nominee on the floor. He cited one reason as the current media environment where outliers realize they can gain attention from opposing a speaker nominee and separate themselves from the leadership to appeal to voters. By the way, I want to bring something up here. The Freedom Caucus has been horse trading in the background. And what has happened is that they have said, hey, we want more power on certain committees. Now, those circumstances led Kevin McCarthy to talk about how it's all personal ego and they're just, these members of the Freedom Caucus are simply angling for a deeper or more important position in the Republican Party leadership of the U.S. House. I think that's mean-spirited. I think that also cost him votes. We've also heard that some members were indeed threatened by Republican Party leadership to go along, or they would have their committee assignments stripped. That also cost Kevin McCarthy votes. Remember, before all this started, there were only about 5 people of the Freedom Caucus that were absolutely not going to vote for Kevin McCarthy. In both instances, both ballots up to this point, what has happened is 19 people have voted against Kevin McCarthy, very likely because of these tactics, these strong-arm tactics behind the scenes in Washington, D.C., among the Republican caucus. And so this is where we stand at this particular moment. John, thanks very much for the question. I sincerely appreciate it. Let's see. What is the story on the suit? What suit? Oh, my suit? Oh. Well, okay. We can probably take a quick second or two. Let me double check on see what's going on here. Let me see what's happening. Yeah, they're just milling about at this particular moment. There will be a call for a third vote, or there will be a call for a recess where the parties can go back and figure this stuff out. And we'll cover both as those unfold. Let's see. What's the story on the suit? Okay. As you know, I have been doing this. It's relatively new for me, doing this broadcast as a podcast, as opposed to a traditional radio show. And when you happen to do radio, this is not a visual medium. Radio is not typically a visual medium, although I have always broadcast the Wells Report on Facebook or whatever platform I could find that would carry it on video. Our video has gotten much more sophisticated as time has gone by. It's going to get more sophisticated even again as soon as I can build this studio to the way to where it needs to be able to do exactly that. That being said, I thought that going into 2023 that a more professional look insofar as what we're trying to do here is provide a professional news coverage that is missing in the mainstream media. And so in order to do that, I figured that what I probably ought to do is I probably ought to look just a little bit more professional. And so that's the story on the suit. Hang on just a couple seconds. This is the Wells Report. Hello, can I help you?
Hello, this is a call from your utility company.
No, it's not. Yeah, okay, thanks very much. Anyway, I just want to take the phone calls because my iPhone decided to call 911. So far, I haven't heard anything. Nobody's called me yet. I don't know what's going on. All I can say is that I certainly hope that that the police don't show up looking for some sort of bad thing. I did not do it on purpose. I just happened to hit both buttons at the same time, and it sent the message. So there you go. All right, so let's get back to what's going on. House rules. People elect the representatives. Representatives elect the speaker. Speaker apparently doesn't have to be a representative to be voted in. That does bring up a couple of different scenarios. For example, Lee Zeldin, the former congressman, he's no longer a congressman in New York. He has been talked about as being elected as speaker. Somebody else you know has also been talked about as a speaker candidate. That would be Donald Trump. Now, I don't believe that Donald Trump could get the votes because, as I've said several times, Donald Trump not only had to fight the Democrat Party, he also had to fight the Republican Party. The Republican Party refusing to realize that their party is changing. And they simply just refuse to acknowledge that. And so as we come to this conversation, Donald Trump probably would not get the votes necessary, but arguably Donald Trump would be someone who would then, as speaker, being able to dole out committee assignments and set the agenda, would dramatically change the way things are done in the House of Representatives. Now, while we're on that subject, earlier today on Twitter, someone said, you know, I've heard that John David Wells is available for the speakership. And I tweeted back, I am certainly available and would absolutely serve as the Speaker of House of Representatives. And what I would do is I would ensure that the U.S. House of Representatives worked to the benefit of the people of the United States instead of the benefit of political parties, whether it be Democrat or Republican. I would immediately halt as much of that as I possibly could. And yes, indeed, by golly, I would absolutely hold accountable those members of the deep state that the Republican Party promises to hold accountable. Will they actually do it? I have no idea. And neither do you, because the Republican Party talks a very, very good game and then does nothing. So in case you want to call your representative and say, hey, someone needs to nominate John David Wells as Speaker of the House, I will go to Washington, D.C., and I will serve. And I know that's absolutely silly, but at the end of the day, how much more silly could it be as me being the Speaker of the House of Representatives versus what we've seen for the last 20 years in the House of Representatives? This is the Wells Report. Back with more in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. We are covering the vote for Speaker of the House. Why are we doing that? Because no House business can occur until a Speaker is voted on and named. There have been 2 votes so far. California Representative Kevin McCarthy, who is the current Republican House leader, has failed in both of those votes up to this point. There will be a 3rd vote. Both party caucuses are imploring their members to stay very close to the House floor while there is a do-over or an alibi for those people who missed the votes, the roll call vote the first time. If indeed a significant number of Democrats, say, for example, leave the floor, then the majority, the need for the majority vote goes down. In other words, 218 are needed for McCarthy to win the speakership. If indeed Democrats leave the floor, that majority will also decrease with the number of Democrats leaving the floor. Now, I would suspect that what's going on here is that there is some very serious conversation going on between the members of the Republican caucus to try to figure out just exactly what they're going to need to do to name a speaker today. They'd like to get that done. We will see if that indeed happens. We are currently taking a look at the House of Representatives, and this is the scene at this particular moment. In a certain amount of time, we don't know exactly how much. What you will see is you'll probably hear it. You may see it, but you will see the clerk who was appointed by Nancy Pelosi rapping the gavel, calling the House into order, and there will indeed be a nomination process again for Speaker. There will be speeches. We will cover those, and there will be a third vote. Now, what I'm expecting is that somebody, and probably going to be a lot of very serious conversations going on among the Republicans to be able to make this happen. But please understand that the propaganda mill is working in full force to the benefit of Kevin McCarthy, who would be Speaker. And that particular mainstream media push to get McCarthy into the speakership would service the status quo that we have seen. Is that something we want? I'm not exactly sure. Getting back to some of the people on our chat room, for a matter of fact, if you guys, several other names have been mentioned for the speakership. One of them is a guy named Clay Higgins. Poker Monkey says, go to YouTube and see what Clay Higgins has to say. And you might want to do that. Gary Abshire concurs and says, yeah, Higgins would be good. We'll see. Let's see. He calls, by the way, Clay Higgins calls the vote, the people who voted for the $1.7 trillion spending bill as thieves in suits. And I have to agree. What we are seeing is by any measure, when you have a country on the brink of a $32 trillion national debt, what you're seeing is embezzlement. There can be no other name for it, except, of course, in politics. And I often talk about the political machine, the nation's security services, the nation's intelligence services, the nation's political meanderings, and then the media that will sustain those meanderings. That is a political machine. It started during the Obama years, President Obama being from Chicago, and anybody who's ever lived in Chicago or Illinois has felt the power of the political machine when it came to how decisions were made in Chicago. Well, all of that was imported into the federal government, and so far it has worked. Let's see what else. Poker also says conservatives need to fight. Correct. Republicans do not fight. They negotiate. What does that mean? Well, what they do is they negotiate for a better deal instead of actually putting forward their own policy initiatives, which is what we have seen. Let's see what else. I don't know much about Andy Biggs. Is he much more conservative than McCarthy, or like a Jordan or a Higgins? Well, he's a member of the Freedom Caucus. He was one of the spokespeople for the Freedom Caucus when it came to what was going on with Kevin McCarthy and what we've seen now. The leadership of the Republican Party did fail us, especially Senator McConnell, who diverted funds from candidates who were Trump supporters or who were endorsed by President Trump. If not for McConnell, we could have taken the Senate. It is my belief, this is just my opinion, it is my belief that indeed that is valid, absolutely valid, because as the Republicans often do, they will snatch defeat out of the jaws of victory, and that is exactly what happened in the midterm elections this time around. And by the way, Poker Monkey also brings up something very important. If nothing else happens, if the U.S. House of Representatives does not elect a speaker, then they can't harm us. That is true. That is true. My dad often talked about running for Congress on the platform of doing absolutely nothing and imposing nothingness on the United States Congress. It was valid then. It's valid now. You are listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. By the way, Ann talks about how the Republicans, the Freedom Caucus specifically, made Jack around and give Hakeem Jeffries the Speaker's gavel. That will not happen. Only votes from the majority party can be counted for Speaker. The others are just simple form. You are listening to the Wells Report. Back with hour number 3 in just a moment. Hour number 2 in just a moment. Thanks very much for joining us. This is an historic day, no doubt about it. And we'll have more of it in a moment. North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. We report the news honestly and fairly. We analyze the news for fact and bias. We point out both. There is commentary. It's just my opinion, just as valuable as yours, and so we debate. What is happening? This is an historic day. Kevin McCarthy, the representative from California, long thought to be the heir apparent to the speakership of the United States House of Representatives, has failed in 2 votes to become the speaker. That is because there are people in the Republican caucus who refuse to vote for Kevin McCarthy, saying that he is a creature of the swamp. Why in heaven's name would you want to indeed put the biggest alligator in the swamp in charge of the House of Representatives? That was said by noted congresspeople.
The Honorable Kevin McCarthy of the state of California has received 203.
Now you can hear laughter from the Democrat caucus. So this is the prelude to the 3rd vote for speaker. Many Republicans, he does have a majority support in the Republican caucus.
The Honorable Jim Jordan of the state of Ohio has received 19. No person having received the majority of the whole number of votes cast by surname, a speaker has not been elected. For what purpose does the gentleman from Louisiana rise?
Madam Clerk, I rise to nominate Kevin McCarthy for the position of Speaker of the House.
The gentleman is recognized. The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We all came here to get things done, to get big things done, to solve the problems. And I hope when we get through today that all of the members on both sides of the aisle will join together with us to.
Okay, hang on just a quick second. What we have here is we have this. I'll get this going for you in just a couple of seconds. Every now and then, the C-SPAN wants to make sure that
Thank you to the
that
cable and
people
satellite company.
are indeed actually watching the broadcast. So here we go.
Time. In fact, it was Kevin McCarthy who put together task forces over a year ago to get members engaged in the process of not just talking about what we don't like, not just talking about what the problems are. We know what those problems are. But how do you fix those problems? And so we started rolling those bills out. We've attempted to bring bills on this floor to address inflation, to lower the cost of goods when families go to the grocery store and they can't even buy all the food they need for their families if they can find that food on their shelf. But those bills were rejected. If a family has trouble putting gas in the tank to make it to the grocery store, because we've got such horrible energy policies under what President Biden's done to shut down American energy, that families can't even afford to put gas in their tanks. And so we brought legislation to the floor to lower the cost of gasoline. And you know what? Those bills were rejected by the previous majority. And I use that term for a reason, previous majority, because we want a majority talking about fixing those problems. But we can't start fixing those problems until we elect Kevin McCarthy as our next speaker. And so what have we laid out? We've got bills just this week to start addressing some of those problems, to start addressing our energy insecurity that's been created when President Biden shut down American energy. There is absolutely no reason that we need to rely on foreign countries to produce our energy. We could produce it all here, cleaner, better, more efficient, and create American jobs in the process. Let's get those bills to this floor. How long have we been highlighting this open southern border? That's not just brought millions of people across our border. Kevin McCarthy's led delegations down to the border to show what the problem is. We know what the problem is. This president refuses to even admit the problem. It's kind of hard for the president to solve a problem when he doesn't even admit it's a problem. Yet let's talk about the numbers. Over 2 million people have come across our border illegally just last year. That's more than the entire state of New Mexico have come into our country illegal, and this president won't even admit it's a problem. Last year alone, we lost over 100,000 young people to deaths from drugs like fentanyl because we have an open southern border. Everybody should be appalled by that stat. The fact that more than 100 of our youngest, best and brightest kids are dead in America because of the fentanyl coming across of our open southern border. These are drugs made in China coming across our southern border and brought into every community in America. And it should stop. It has to stop, but it won't stop until either the president takes action, which he won't, or we pass legislation on the floor to fix those problems. But that doesn't start until we elect Kevin McCarthy as our speaker. We know what the challenges are. We've laid out solutions to these problems. It's sad to say these aren't problems that are very hard to fix because we weren't in this situation just a few years ago. But if the administration doesn't want to fix these problems, people call on us to do that. And it starts here in the people's house. Let's rise to this challenge. Let's meet the challenges that the American people sent all of us, not just the Republicans, not just the Democrats, but all 434, soon to be 435 of us. We can meet those challenges, but let's start by electing Kevin McCarthy as our next speaker. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from California rise?
Madam Clerk, I rise to nominate Hakeem Jeffries for unity in
The gentleman
Congress,
has been recognized.
for unity in Congress and progress in our country. Democrats are united behind Hakeem Jeffries. I recommend Hakeem Jeffries as our speaker. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
All Democrats voted for Hakeem Jeffries in the first two votes. They stand united, and as you can see, they are far more energized than the Republican Party.
Does not seem like he's seeking recognition, so let's just say the clerk is prepared to call the roll.
The reading clerk is prepared to call the roll.
This is the gentleman from Texas.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas seek recognition?
Seek to place a name in a nomination, Speaker.
The gentleman is recognized.
So this is what the chamber looks like when we're actually debating and the bodies are in the chairs. How many times have we been down here giving speeches and there's not a soul in the chamber? Yet this is what it takes to get 435 people in the chamber and have an actual debate.
This is Representative
The
Chip
American
Roy
people
of Texas.
Are watching, and that's a good thing. What we're doing is exercising our rights to vote and have a debate and have a discussion about the future of this country through the decision of choosing a speaker. This is not personal. It's not. This is about the future of the country. This is about the direction of the country. American people who are looking at this body and wondering why we can pass $1.7 trillion bills that are unpaid for. They can just slide in $45 billion for Ukraine but not pay for it. $40 billion for emergency spending and not pay for it. 10% increase in defense spending, 6% increase in non-defense spending and not pay for it. And not do a thing except put language in a bill that prohibits our ability to use the money to secure the border. That bill gets rammed through, and we know exactly how it gets rammed through, because the defense world and the non-defense world come together and say, you know what? We're going to cut a deal, and we'll all go to the mics, and we'll all go give speeches, and the American people are the big losers. That's what happens. We know that's what happens. The Rules Committee sits up there and passes a bill, sends it to the floor, and we have no debate on the floor of this body. We haven't been able to offer an amendment on the floor of this body since May of 2016. The former leader and I have discussed this right here. That's true. But the fact is, this place has to change. It has to change. And the change comes by either adopting rules and procedures that will make us actually do our job, or it comes from leadership. And people ask me, what do you want? I want the tools or I want the leadership to stop the swamp from running over the average American every single day. We can't keep doing this. I'm going to sit here until we figure out how to stop spending money we don't have. I don't want any more empty promises. I don't want any more, oh, don't worry, trust us, we'll do it. I want to know that we're going to be able to exercise our rights as a member of this body to stand up for the American people and actually fix this country. And it's not going to happen when we use our men and women in uniform in defense and wrap ourselves around that and then spend more money that we don't have, weakening that defense, weakening our country in the process. But that's what we just did. Ladies and gentlemen, I am asking for us to come together and figure out how to solve these problems. And to do that, I'm going to do what I did my very first act as a member of Congress or as a congressman-elect and nominate Jim Jordan for Speaker. Now, Jim has said he doesn't want that nomination, and Jim has been down here nominating Kevin, and I respect that. And again, I have no personal animus towards Kevin. And I've worked for the last 2 months to try to figure out how to get the rules to make this place better, and we've made progress. But we do not have the tools or the leadership yet to stop the swamp from rolling over the American people. Jim has been doing it. He has a track record of doing it. And for those reasons, I'm nominating Jim Jordan from Ohio for Speaker of the House of Representatives.
The reading clerk will call the roll.
And so the vote will now begin. And what we will see is we will either see Kevin McCarthy elected as Speaker, or he will fail again. Remember, there are some things that can happen. What can happen is that the people that have been voting against Kevin McCarthy can vote present, or they can abstain. And that would very likely make Kevin McCarthy the Speaker of the House of Representatives. The other aspect of this is that while that could indeed be possible, it would dramatically undercut whatever power is available to the Freedom Caucus, and they are very likely not going to back off their position until there is a deal made that will mollify them and thus allow the ascension of Kevin McCarthy to be the Speaker of the House. This is historic. It has not happened since 1923, if my memory serves. Mark has pointed out there is also something else that could happen. Indeed, McCarthy could recuse himself and get out of the way of somebody else to be the Speaker of the House. Very likely that Speaker of the House would be Jim Jordan. Jim Jordan does not want the job, as was pointed out before. And the reason he does not want the job is because he wants to be the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee. And he wants to go after the deep state. And he wants to go after FBI accountability, DOJ accountability, and many other things. That's what he wants to do. So that being said, is there somebody else? Chip Roy. Who else would be? Clay Higgins. We'll just have to see. Or maybe someone from outside the House of Representatives. That is in play too. This is the Wells Report. Back with more in just a moment.
McCarthy. Cartwright. Jeffries. Kassar. Jeffries.
This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. In the background, you hear the roll call vote of the House of Representatives as the third vote for Speaker of the House is currently underway. Let me show you what that looks like. There are already 4 votes for Jim Jordan of Ohio to be the Speaker of the House. If another person votes for Jim Jordan, then this will be the third vote in a row that Kevin McCarthy will have been turned aside from the speakership. And that is what we are paying attention to at this particular moment. As this historic day continues to unfold, as we come to this particular moment, 31 votes for Kevin McCarthy, 33 votes for Hakeem Jeffries. Indeed, the Democrat Jeffries has won both of the first 2 votes. He will not ascend to the speakership insofar as the Republicans control the House of Representatives. So we are waiting to see if someone else is going to vote for Jim Jordan. And there it is. I did not catch the person's name, but Kevin McCarthy will indeed fail on this third vote to become the Speaker of the House of Representatives. What will happen next? Well, it's quite possible that there will be a 4th vote and maybe a 5th, or maybe there will be a recess, in which case the 2 caucuses would return to private meetings, and the Democrats would sit around and say, gosh, I wonder what the Republicans are going to do. The Republicans would probably have what was kind of a repeat of what was a bare knuckle fight earlier today, when even profanity was used in their caucus meeting. And so we are waiting. Now Jim Jordan has 6 votes. The people voting against Kevin McCarthy numbered in 19 in both the first 2 votes. So this is where we stand. We see a united Democrat Party. Every single member, 212, have voted for Hakeem Jeffries. They will doubtless do it again. And whether or not Kevin McCarthy is able to make the deals necessary to be able to secure the votes necessary remains to be seen. And that's where we stand. And Jordan now has 7 votes, and this is the state of play. So let's see what we've got here. Let me go back and see what we have. Gary says, I think that most of the Republican Party is Republican in name only, or Rhino. It's really not bipartisan. That is true. Bipartisanship in this particular political climate equals, for all intents and purposes, Republican capitulation to Democrat policy. And we've seen that over and over and over again. Most prevalent recently in the Senate when Mitch McConnell engineered a vote of the $1.7 trillion omnibus. If they could have just passed a continuing resolution, then indeed the first bit of business for the Republican-controlled House of Representatives in the 118th Congress would be to pass a budget bill. There are 12 separate budget bills. They have been all combined into these gigantic omnibus bills that we have seen over and over and over again. And what we have when that happens is a mess. And that is indeed how we got to a $31 trillion national debt. So the vote continues. Kevin McCarthy will not ascend to the speakership on this vote. Hakeem Jeffries will very likely win the vote for the 3rd time. Once again, he will not be the Speaker of the House. We have 7 votes for Jim Jordan. We'll see whether or not that number has changed. It was 19 last time. We'll see if there are fewer votes, etc. As time goes by. Let's see, $32 trillion not paid for. Yes, indeed. This is breaking news. This is historic. And we will see whether or not the Republican Party will get the news. More about that as we continue. This is the Wells Report. Thanks very much for joining us today. We will continue in just a couple of moments as this roll call continues. This is the Wells Report. Breaking news, an historic day. What is happening? Well, for the third time, Representative of California, Kevin McCarthy, has been turned aside as being voted in as Speaker of the House of Representatives. How long will this go? I do not know. Let me show you what C-SPAN is talking about. Oops. Well, there you go. I was looking at the wrong camera anyway. Well, I was looking at the right camera. Then I was looking at the wrong camera. Let me show you what C-SPAN is showing. There are now 11 votes for Jim Jordan. The magic number is 5. If 5 people vote against Kevin McCarthy, he will not be the Speaker of the House. And so far, everybody is dug in. I can't see Kevin McCarthy walking away from the speakership. He is going to stay there. He has been quoted in the news as saying, "I'm going to stay until this is over." And now what we have here is we have a circumstance where the Freedom Caucus would badly damage themselves if they backed away without getting what they want, which is more power in committees and so on and so forth to push forward what many conservatives believe is a much better route for the Republican Party. What we're seeing here has been characterized as chaos by the mainstream media. But what you must understand, even as far as Fox News is concerned, the mainstream media is part of what is a political machine, the likes of which none of us have ever seen, and maybe no one has ever seen in the history of the United States, where the security services of the United States, the intelligence services of the United States, the Democrat Party, and the progressive wing of the Democrat Party, and also the mainstream media have all colluded to create this machine. What we are seeing is less a vote for say, for example, Republican chaos, as it's been described. What we are seeing is we're seeing a fight for the future of the Republican Party. Something that I have said many, many times, I happen to believe that the Republican Party is lost. They are simple facilitators of Democrat policy. And the people of the United States have spoken in the form of these Freedom Caucus Party members who refuse to play ball under these circumstances. So the only thing that we can think about at this particular moment is whether or not Jim Jordan is going to continue getting 19 votes, because that is the number of votes that he has gotten in the first two ballots. Getting back to what we have here. Let's see. Getting back to the chat room. Let's see. Let's see here. Having to fight both parties at the same time. That's Poker Monkey referring to Donald Trump. Yes, that's true. Many people have thought that maybe Donald Trump could be the Speaker of the House, because you don't have to be a member of the you don't have to be a member of the House. You don't have to be a sitting congressman to be the Speaker. Let's see. This would be the third vote, not the fourth. Okay. The fourth one is going to be next. Maybe this will take weeks. It's possible. Weeks that they cannot harm us. It is quite possible that indeed that's not really true, because if anything, we can see, especially with various parts of the American government, we can see that this government can harm us regardless of legislative action. It's called the deep state. And the deep state has wielded its very ugly, very un-American power, and we have seen it ourselves. In fact, simply lying to the American people with regards to, say, for example, I don't know, Hunter Biden's laptop is Russian disinformation. Disproved, and yet over 50 former and current intelligence officials in the American intelligence agencies said that it had all the earmarks of Russian disinformation. Well, if that is their decision-making, now disproved by reality and truth, then what we have here is I wonder what other intelligence ideas or intelligence issues they have screwed up in their chase for politics over their jobs, which is to be the eyes and ears of the United States of America. So indeed, the deep state can still harm us. The DOJ is still unfettered. They are still trying to chase down their great white whale of Donald Trump. Not a racial statement, but a statement more in terms and along the lines of the literary character that led a ship to its demise. And we will see whether or not that indeed happens. So 102 votes for McCarthy. Hakeem Jeffries, all of the Democrats are going to vote for Hakeem Jeffries. Jordan now has 12 votes. We will see whether or not he makes 19. There is other news. The suspect involved in the Idaho college murders has waived his right to fight extradition from Pennsylvania and is very likely on his way to Idaho, where he will face charges of 4 charges of premeditated murder. So what we're going to do is we're going to have to see just exactly where that goes. 105 votes now for Kevin McCarthy, and Jim Jordan has 12 votes. By the way, when Brian Koberger makes it back to Idaho, we will see a lot more of what took place in the investigations. There is news on that you need to be aware of, but this obviously takes precedence as we watch the third vote for the speakership of the House of Representatives and the third time that Kevin McCarthy has indeed been turned aside. By the way, Mark points out that one of the things Jim Jordan wants to do is to run down those 50 intelligence agency officials. I want to see that too. I want to see those guys testify under oath as to exactly what they were thinking when they tried to dissuade before the 2020 election, dissuade the American people that the material on Hunter Biden's laptop in possession of the FBI for over 2 years had somehow been a Russian intelligence plot. Even a casual outside of the government perusal of that laptop proved the fact that it was indeed Hunter Biden's laptop, and indeed was authentic, and indeed was not Russian disinformation. I would certainly like to see those guys explain themselves under oath in front of everyone, because that indeed needs to happen. And we'll see whether or not it does. But before any of that business can be accomplished, the speaker of the House must be elected. Gary also asks, who wants to bet on how many vote cycles it's going to take? What is the over-under? I don't believe that we're going to see a speaker elected before a recess of today's work. And what we'll see here is we'll see whether or not that indeed happens, whether it happens after this vote or maybe after a fourth speaker vote. We'll see whether or not they decide to say, okay, let's take a time out here and let's go talk things over. That probably will happen. If that indeed happens, I would suggest that what would end up happening would be that Speaker McCarthy would eventually indeed win the speakership. So we will see. McCarthy has 120 votes. Jeffries has 114. Jim Jordan has 13 votes. Remember, the first 2 votes, he received 19 votes. Well, actually, there are 19 dissenting votes from Kevin McCarthy. In the second vote, Jim Jordan got 19. We're watching this to see whether or not Jim Jordan will get that 19 votes again. And if so, whether or not there might be a little bit of fraying in the caucus, the Freedom Caucus voters that are voting against Kevin McCarthy. Let's see, what do we have here? On the subject of Hunter Biden's laptop, Isaac points out that, or opines that most Americans don't care about the laptop. I don't believe that's the case. In fact, I believe that most Americans do indeed care about what's on that laptop. Indeed, many have said through various surveys that what they would have done is reconsider their vote for Joe Biden if indeed they had known more. So there you go. Let's see what else. Gates says that he would hold out for months if need be with regards to this speaker vote. And I would suggest that the hardliners of the Freedom Caucus, it only takes 5. The hardliners of the Freedom Caucus would indeed hold on as long as necessary. That's what I was discussing at the beginning of this segment. What I would say is that that when it comes right down to it, that no one's going to move. McCarthy isn't going anywhere. The Freedom Caucus is not going anywhere unless there is indeed a deal made that mollifies the Freedom Caucus. If that indeed happens, then I would suggest that the next person that nominates someone for the speakership would probably be a member of the Freedom Caucus, and then would allude to how that a deal had been struck, that indeed they were interested in moving forward and getting the business of the American people done after they achieve what they're looking for, which is more political power. And I don't believe that is, at least in this particular case, I don't believe what Kevin McCarthy said and tried to characterize it as simply empire building on the part of the Freedom Caucus. That doesn't ring true to me. I think that's a political statement, and I think it's an unfortunate one. And I think that indeed that there is a circumstance whereby the people who have been leaning on the Freedom Caucus, even threatening them, as reports have been saying, that what would happen is that cost McCarthy votes. And remember, there were 5 hardline Freedom Caucus members. Well, now 19 votes have appeared against the would-be Speaker Kevin McCarthy. By the way, Jim Jordan now has 14 votes. So let's see. Getting back to the laptop, Isaac points out that it was his laptop that was breached. He's talking about Hunter Biden. If you care about his laptop, then you should have issues with the previous administration dealings, including Jared's $400 million deals. Well, if Jared had done $400 million in deals, then the Democrat majority that was in power and no longer is in power would have immediately started investigations. And they did not. Let's see. The sheeple failed to recognize the smoking gun, that being the laptop. When Isaac Poker says, when Isaac points out most Americans, that refers to the leftist media. Many independents and Democrats never even heard about the laptop. And that is true because news about the laptop was quashed by big tech and the mainstream media, absent Fox News. So what we have here is we have this historic event. We're not going to be distracted by the laptop. That's for another discussion for another day. But what we have here is we have something that is extremely important to the people of the United States, which is why indeed we covered it and why we are covering it as we speak. So getting a look at the vote, this is one of the rare moments where there is a roll call vote of the entire House of Representatives. Most of the time, that's not the way it goes. A lot of times they just simply do a voice vote, and the outcome is already predetermined. 15 votes now for Jim Jordan, who is the representative for Ohio. By the way, in the second vote, Jim Jordan was the guy that nominated Kevin McCarthy, and he has pointed out that he does not want this job. Hang on just a moment.
Jordan.
Okay, that's 15 votes. Oh, 16 votes now.
Omar.
So we'll see. We'll see how this goes. Wow. I didn't think this was going to happen. I am on record as saying that I expected Kevin McCarthy to ascend to the speakership almost immediately. And that has not happened. And indeed may not happen. So there you go.
McCarthy.
Let's listen a bit as this vote continues.
Jeffries. Pappas. Jeffries. Pasquale. Jeffries. Payne. Jeffries. Pelosi. Jeffries.
That is Nancy Pelosi following the longtime Democrat tradition of voting several times. She voted for Hakeem Jeffries 3 times.
McCarthy.
And so things are getting either delirious or lighthearted on the floor of the United States House of Representatives.
Jordan.
And Jim Jordan now has 17 votes. 17 votes. By the way, getting back to the original question, how many votes will it take?
Jeffries.
I'm saying that the over-under will be 7 votes. It'll take 7 votes to determine who the next Speaker of the House is. So what I want to know is, are you going to take the under or the over?
Hickory.
So do you believe it'll take more than 8 votes, or do you believe it will take less votes?
Jeffries.
Less than 7. I'm establishing the over-under. This is the Wells Report. We'll be back with more coming up in just a moment.
Posey. McCarthy. Presley. Austin Scott.
This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. Kevin McCarthy has been turned aside to ascend to the speakership of the U.S. House of Representatives 3 times. A 4th speaker vote is now expected. We've been watching whether or not Jim Jordan would either get as many votes as he got in the 2nd vote, which was 19. He has indeed done that. Also, by the way, we are looking to see whether anybody was going to add to that 19 number vote, and someone has indeed voted. Now Jim Jordan has 20 votes to be the Speaker of the House of Representatives. So the margin of turning aside Kevin McCarthy is getting wider, not smaller. And when it comes to smaller and larger, I just established how many votes it was going to take, at least the over and under. And I set the over and under at 7 votes. I believe that there will be 7 vote cycles. So far, we have one taking the over and 1 taking the under. I think 7 votes is probably pretty good. But what I also expect to see happen is I expect to see that this will probably be the last vote before someone steps up and says, hey, we need a recess. And the Republican caucus will go back to their meeting, and they will very likely have a spirited discussion like they had this morning. There was a vote by, a speech by Kevin McCarthy earlier today that, according to the reporting that we've heard, fell flat with the Republican membership. So Jim Jordan now has 20 votes. That's 1 more vote than he had last time around. My goodness. And that is significant. That is significant. So we'll see just exactly where this turns out. Let's see. On the over-under, we now have someone taking the over, and that's Poker. So we have 2 votes for the over. That is more than 7 votes before we have a new speaker. And we have 1. Let's see. Gary says, yeah, they're going to recess. Is it because they have very important political wrangling to do behind the scenes? That's not what Gary says. Gary says they're going to recess because it's nearly happy hour. And if I can have a small moment of partisan snarkiness, that would probably be good news for Nancy Pelosi because, well, never mind. I'm just kidding. I'm joking. So let's see. 186 votes for Hakeem Jeffries, 179 votes for Kevin McCarthy, and 20 votes for Jim Jordan. Yeah. Mark says that McCarthy is reminiscent of a snake oil salesman. Well, he certainly is a professional politician. There is no doubt about that. And as we watch this unfold, let's see if we can hear some of these votes. By the way, Michael Burgess, who was my former congressman, voted for McCarthy. I believe he's voted a couple of different times.
Jeffries.
And
Thompson of Pennsylvania. McCarthy.
yeah, and so
Tiffany.
so what we have here is we have
McCarthy.
I'm waiting to see what
Simmons.
Beth Van Dyne votes. She's from
McCarthy.
Texas. She's my current
Titus.
congressman. Let's see where they are in the alphabetical order.
Titus. Tlaib. Jeffries. Takuda. Jeffries.
The Democrats are voting for
Tonko.
Hakeem Jeffries.
Jeffries. Torres of California. Jeffries. Torres of New York. Jeffries. Trahan. Jeffries. Trone. Jeffries. Turner. McCarthy. Underwood. Jeffries. Valadeo. McCarthy. Van Drew. McCarthy. Van Dyne. McCarthy.
Okay, so Beth Van Dyne has voted
Van
for
Orden.
Kevin McCarthy. Let's see.
McCarthy.
Oh, yes.
Vargas.
Yvonne Field asks, now, wait a minute. You said that Mike Burgess, Dr. Michael Burgess, who's been on this broadcast many, many times, as has Beth Van Dyne.
Jeffries.
She says, Burgess was your former congressman. I know you haven't moved. Did the district lines get moved? Indeed, they did. And so I have a great deal of respect, admiration, even friendship with Michael Burgess. He's an amazing man. And also he's somebody that has really worked very, very hard for his district. I know he did when he was the congressman for the Texas 26th. But yeah, the lines moved, and Beth Van Dyne became our congressman. I have a great affinity for Beth Van Dyne. She is a solid human being. And just as a personal aside, Beth Van Dyne pretty much blames me for coercing her to run for Congress. I don't know whether to be proud of that or sorrowful, because she has described what she is doing in Washington D.C. as something reminiscent of a word that is one letter shy of hit show. That's what she says is going on in Washington, D.C. I might give her a buzz here as we wait for hour number 3 of the Wells Report. Like I said, I was expecting this to be pretty seriously straightforward, that Kevin McCarthy was indeed going to win the speakership. But that has not been the case. Jim Jordan has received 20 votes, one more than he did last time. Is that going to increase? We'll see. This is the Wells Report. Hour number 3 is next.
McCarthy.
And so there you go. Stick around. We'll have more coming up for you right after this.
Womack.
North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. What do we do here? We report the news honestly, fairly. We analyze the news for fact and bias. We point that out. And we also have commentary. That's not the news. That's just my opinion, just as valuable as yours, and so we debate. The Wells Report, news, analysis, commentary, and debate. And I've been doing this now since 9/11/2001. And I've stayed true to that mission and will continue to. And therefore, we are covering this amazing day in the House of Representatives as Kevin McCarthy, longtime thought of even by this reporter as the heir apparent to the speakership of the United States House of Representatives, has been turned aside 3 times now. He's been turned aside to be the speaker. It only takes 5 defections from that vote, from the vote for Kevin McCarthy to turn him aside. How many times will it happen? Well, I set the over and under at 7 votes. There is already information from people. The Freedom Caucus is now hoping to get an adjournment, which is something that I would suspect would happen, so that the conference could go back and hash things out. If they are indeed willing to do that, and indeed willing to strike deals, then what would indeed happen is that a member of the Freedom Caucus, don't know who it would be, would step up to the microphone and then nominate Kevin McCarthy after discussing the fact that they were mollified in what they wish. So the 4th vote is going to happen. How does that unfold? Glad you asked. What ends up happening is that people will stand up and nominate their choice for speaker. Someone will nominate Kevin McCarthy. And if the last 2 votes are true in the 4th, someone will stand up again and nominate Jim Jordan. So Jim Jordan does not want the job. He wants to be the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, where he can start working on some of these investigations into the deep state and into the DOJ and many other things. I was very surprised to see this unfold, and I have to tell you that what we see in the House of Representatives is something we have not seen. Certainly not in our lifetimes. It has happened before, but it has not happened in recent times, because most of this stuff is taken care of behind the scenes. And that has not happened this time. Indeed, what has happened is that we see a protracted fight to be who the next speaker of the House of Representatives will be. By the way, Hakeem Jeffries, the entire Democrat conference has voted for Hakeem Jeffries in all of these votes. Indeed, he has more votes for speaker than Kevin McCarthy. He will not ascend to the speakership insofar as the Republican Party has control of the chamber. The rules forbid him from being the next Speaker of the House, and so on. So what we have here, Gary says across the board, most people thought that Kevin McCarthy was a shoo-in. I thought so. I thought that they would figure out exactly what to do and what decisions to make behind the scenes. Now, what we're waiting for at this particular moment is whether or not there's going to be an adjournment where the conference can figure it out. Now, Kevin McCarthy says he's not willing to leave the floor. So what we have is we have another standoff. And whether or not Kevin McCarthy can stop an adjournment or not, I do not know. I do not know. I also don't believe that the Democrats would go along with an adjournment either, insofar as far as they're concerned, this works to their advantage. I think that's probably overstated more than what is real. But what we see here is we see a fight for the future of the Republican Party. The Republican Party has long been run by people who negotiate with the Democrat Party for a better deal in their view, as opposed to fighting the Democrat Party for their particular policy ideas. That means that the Republican Party is more or less, under the guise of bipartisanship, facilitators of Democrat policy items. And we have seen that over and over and over. By the way, on the other side, there was much less contention as the Republican Party is out of power in the Senate. The Democrats now have 51 votes to the Republicans' 49. And Mitch McConnell, with his swearing in today and his continued leadership of the Republicans in the Senate, has become the longest serving leader of the Republican Party in the history of the United States Senate. And I think that is very, very serious. That is a very seriously bad move for most of us who believe that the people I describe as being facilitators of the Democrat agenda are led by someone in the person of Mitch McConnell. So there's a fourth vote expected. We don't know whether that's going to happen. We don't know how long it's going to take. They usually have about 10 minutes or so between the votes. As you can see, as I'll show you here, the members of the House are essentially milling about and having their conversations. Right there is Matt Gaetz speaking to one of his colleagues. He's in the center of the picture behind the two other congressmen right in front of him. And Matt Gaetz is a prime mover in this Freedom Caucus and these guys who say they will not vote for Kevin McCarthy. They have 5 of those never McCarthy voters. And what we see here, that's enough to turn this aside. I truly expect that there will be an adjournment because cooler heads have to prevail here. We have to see a Republican Party come together at some point, and they doubtless will. But it's going to take some very serious horse trading by the Speaker of the next Speaker of the House, if that was Kevin McCarthy, and he's already given certain things to the Freedom Caucus. The Freedom Caucus wanted to see that that there be an opportunity to remove the Speaker on a vote of no confidence. This is something that the British House of Commons, which is the rough analog to the House of Representatives, the People's House, that is what they have. They have a vote of no confidence, and they can remove the Prime Minister. That, on the other hand, is a different kind. It's a parliamentary system, and what ends up happening is that the de facto leader of the nation in a parliamentary system is a creature of the legislative branch. The framers of our nation decided that what we wanted to do was have 3 independent branches of our government: legislative, executive, and judiciary. And that way, decisions that had to be made very quickly by, say, for example, the executive branch would be available to the people of the United States. It's a system that I believe that has worked brilliantly, and I much prefer it over the parliamentary system. Although when you see new governments appear in various countries around the world, invariably they choose that parliamentary system. It hasn't seemed to hurt Britain. Britain has been able to do the things necessary. Let's listen to the CNN commentator.
Now, the first nominating speech for Kevin McCarthy to be Speaker, that started in the noon hour today. We are now in our 5th hour of the 118th Congress. Republicans at a stalemate over who should be their Speaker in this new Congress. They have the majority, but they cannot get, Kevin McCarthy, the leader of the Republicans, cannot get a majority of those voting to vote for him today. There's lots of reporting on Capitol Hill about what happens next. Do they adjourn? And if they do, they would need 218 votes to do so. This means Democrats would have to vote for it, according to CNN. Unclear if they would. And leader Kevin McCarthy wants to keep voting. If they don't adjourn, we're expecting a 4th round of voting. Live coverage here on C-SPAN.
All right, so that is the very latest from the CNN commentator. I'm sorry, the C-SPAN commentator. I didn't mean to call him CNN because if it was CNN, we wouldn't be watching it, actually. C-SPAN, on the other hand, is one of the parts of the American media that is trustworthy. They normally simply cover and report. They don't normally opine, although they do have opportunities for people to call them and make their ideas heard, which, by the way, you do too on the Wells Report. You can join us at your leisure, 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. I've established the over-under on the number of votes at 7. We have 2 votes for the over and 1 vote for the under. So I believe that over-under number is very good. I think that 7 is probably about right. But I would also expect someone to step up and make a motion to adjourn so that the party conferences can get together and discuss next moves. So whether or not the Freedom Caucus has clearly delineated what they want out of this or not remains to be seen. They have been somewhat evasive in media interviews, included a couple of conversations with members of the Freedom Caucus on Fox News that showed us that Fox News is certainly biased as well. They are solely behind Kevin McCarthy, and they believe that Kevin McCarthy should be the next Speaker of the House of Representatives. Whether that actually happens or not remains to be seen. I do have to say this, that it is not the place of the American media at any level to try to coerce or sway the political process of the nation. Here's the CNN commentator one more time, or C-SPAN commentator one more time.
For the 118th Congress, you can see him talking there to Andy Biggs of Arizona, one of the leaders of opposition to Kevin McCarthy becoming the next Speaker of the House. Again, they have just concluded on the House floor the 3rd round of voting. California Republican Kevin McCarthy failing to get the votes he needs, 20 Republicans rejecting him as Speaker. We will continue our coverage here on C-SPAN. Wait to see what happens next. Do they adjourn, or is there a 4th round of voting?
We will see as that seems to be the issue of the day. Will there be a 4th round of voting? I don't know. Gary says that 5 rhinos, folded arms, pouty faces. Come on, be on our team. Change your vote. Let's go home. Well, I don't think that's going to happen because I think both sides are dug in. I think the only thing that is going to make this anywhere close to reasonable is if they can go ahead and talk about an adjournment. There are other possibilities. There's a possibility that Kevin McCarthy can step down. I don't think he's going to do that. I don't. I also think that it's possible that the Freedom Caucus may indeed get a deal that they like, and I suspect that's what's going to happen. But we will wait to see whether or not someone moves to adjourn. That is what I consider to be a likely scenario. Another vote is also possible, and we will cover that like a blanket. Breaking news on the Wells Report. It's what we do. If you have something you'd like to share, by all means do so. 817-379-2172, or go to the chat room on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. Back with more in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. We are waiting for, okay. Oh, shoot. Let's see. Sorry again. Dang. I was tweeting somebody I know on Capitol Hill. Turns out that I was tweeting the wrong person. Hang on. Hang on a second. Just give me a moment. Hang on. All right. Okay. So what I'm going to try to do here is we wait to see whether or not there's either going to be a fourth vote or whether or not there's going to be a move to adjourn so that the conference can figure it all out. We will have to see. Let me hang on just a minute. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to try to reach out to this person because it's somebody that has a dog in the hunt. And what I'm trying to do is find out how that person is holding up under these circumstances. So that's what I'm trying to do. Let's see here. Let me see if that's the one. Okay. There you go. Let's see. Having some fun now. Exclamation point. Let's see if I can get through to this person, and I'll be done in just a second. All right. Let me, I got one more word I've got to type. Sorry about this, but I tried this and once again, got the wrong person. Okay. All right. All right. So here is the state of play. What is at odds, or what is up next? Two things can happen. A fourth vote can be taken. There will be nominations and nomination speeches. We'll cover them. There will be another roll call vote. It will be the fourth. Once again, I've established that it will take at least 7 votes. So actually, the over-under is 7. You can vote on whether you believe it'll be more than 7 votes or less than 7 votes. The over-under is 7. So far, we have 2 votes for the under and 1 vote for the over. And if you'd like to weigh in, please, by all means, go to the chat room. That's probably the easiest way. Although you can call anytime, 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. So what can happen? They can either vote, they can either move to adjourn and go talk it over. They can have a fourth vote. Kevin McCarthy can stand down. I doubt that's going to happen. The Freedom Caucus can change. Here's the C-SPAN commentator.
Kevin McCarthy failed to secure the votes needed of the 434 voting. He needs 218. 20 Republicans have opposed his speakership. 19 in the first 2 rounds, and then it grew to 20 with Byron Donalds joining those other Republicans in the 3rd round. Jake Sherman of Punchbowl News is tweeting out, there is talk in the House Republican ranks that there will be an attempt to adjourn until tomorrow. He notes that Chip Roy of Texas, who's part of those 20 Republicans opposing Kevin McCarthy, is talking to a McCarthy deputy in the middle of the House floor. Our coverage continues here on C-SPAN.
And it also continues here on the Wells Report as we continue to watch history unfold before our eyes. Big time politics played out live and in color on this broadcast and others. Thanks very much for joining us. We'll be back with more of the Wells Report following this quick break. Thanks for joining us today. We're going to break in early here because the clerk is about ready to energize the House of Representatives. This will either be a fourth vote or a call for an adjournment. Let's find out.
The tellers agree in their tallies that the total number of votes cast is 434, of which the Honorable Hakeem Jeffries of the state of New York has received 212. The Honorable Kevin McCarthy of the state of California has received 202. The Honorable Jim Jordan of the state of Ohio has received 20. No person having received the majority of the whole number of votes cast by surname, a speaker has not been elected. For what purpose does the gentleman from Oklahoma rise?
I move to adjourn until noon tomorrow.
Question is on the motion.
The question is on the motion.
All those in favor say aye.
All those in favor say aye.
All those opposed, no.
All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted. The House stands adjourned until noon tomorrow.
And there you have it. And so the House of Representatives has adjourned for the day. And that, of course, means that we're not going to have a Speaker of the House tonight. We don't know how many votes it's going to take, but people who took the under on the proposition bet of the over-under being 7 may indeed have the inside track on whether or not Kevin McCarthy is going to remain as the Speaker of the House of Representatives. I'm John David Wells. Thanks very much for joining us here on the Wells Report. We're going to be back in just a couple of seconds after we sort of restack and repack. There are other things that we can talk about today, but it has been, without doubt, an extremely historic day in American politics as the Speaker of the House of Representatives, long thought to be Kevin McCarthy. Not happening. Not happening. The Freedom Caucus has made it plain that they will not support Kevin McCarthy. Will he make a deal? Will he stand down? If he stands down, who will replace him as the leading candidate? These are all things that will be talked about into the night tonight and certainly tomorrow. And regarding what that situation may end up with either way, we will cover it on the Wells Report. We will be back with more coming up in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. So what do you think of that? What do you think of what just happened? 817-379-2172. Would love to hear from you on that particular subject. It has been an amazing day. There are other things to discuss, and we will discuss those as we continue. But if you'd like to make an opinion about what you have seen so far, was it good? Was it terrible? What do you think? Telephone number, 817-379-2172. You can join us on the chat room as well. So there is movement in the Idaho college murder case. It has been a terrible, terrible experience for all of us in the nation, as 4 college students were mercilessly slaughtered in Moscow, Idaho, by someone who we don't actually know who the perpetrator was, but we do have a suspect. He was found in Pennsylvania. He was arrested there. There has been no movement regarding how much information we've gotten from the Idaho police departments that are involved. The FBI is also involved in that investigation. Moscow police won't talk about their evidence, won't talk about their case work that they have done, because it's against Idaho law to talk about someone who is not in the state. The suspect in the November slaying of 4 University of Idaho students waived extradition from his home state of Pennsylvania earlier today and will now face 4 murder charges, premeditated murder charges, in Idaho. Brian Koberger arrived at the Pennsylvania Monroe County Courthouse by prison transport van. He was in a prison jumpsuit. He was handcuffed. He was escorted to the back of the courthouse by armed law enforcement. Koberger answered no when the judge asked if he had any mental health issues that would impede his ability to waive extradition. Koberger's father, also in the courtroom, shook his head no. The defendant signed the waiver at the defense table with shackles still around his wrists. Judge Worthington ordered Koberger to be handed over to the custody of the Latah County District Attorney's Office within 10 days. That will very likely, it probably has already happened, in fact. Koberger has invoked his right to be silent going forward, his state-appointed extradition attorney, Jason Labar, said. Tuesday's move was expected after the attorney earlier indicated his client planned to waive extradition from his home state and called the hearing a formality proceeding. All the Commonwealth needed to prove is that the client resembles or is the person on the arrest warrant and that he was in the area of the time of the crimes. This according to Monroe County Chief Public Defender Labar, telling CNN. Koberger did not answer reporters' questions as he was escorted in. He made eye contact with and nodded to his family seated in the first row of the courtroom behind his defense table as the officers brought him in. Koberger's mother and father sat on either side of his sisters, accompanied by a representative from the public defender's office. And when the judge told Koberger he faces charges of murder when he returns to Idaho, his mother collapsed into his sister's arms, both sobbing openly. Arrangements are currently being made to transfer Koberger to Idaho, according to state police. No timeline has been announced. Quote, "My heart goes out to the families of the victims, their friends, the community of Moscow, and the University of Idaho," Pennsylvania State Police Commissioner Robert Ivanchik said at a news conference. "No words can heal the pain associated with the loss of a child. Their young lives were ended far too soon." The Monroe County Correctional Facility warden informed officials that Koberger had been a model prisoner who had not caused any problems during his time in detention. There were earlier reports that he had threatened some prison guards, apparently untrue. Koberger, considered a maximum status prisoner, is being held in a cell monitored by an officer at all times. He has been quiet and followed directions, according to the source. Koberger was arrested Friday in Pennsylvania, almost 7 weeks after Kaylee Goncalves, Madison Mogan, Zana Kernoodle, and Ethan Chapin were found dead November 13th in an off-campus home in Moscow, Idaho. Koberger was shocked a little bit, Labar told CNN a day after his client was arrested. Koberger is presumed innocent until proven guilty, Labar added in a statement. He believes he's going to be exonerated he said on an NBC Today Show interview earlier today. Koberger has been very easy to talk to, is in a calm demeanor, understands the proceedings, including what to expect concerning his transport to Idaho and what to expect when he gets there. The 28-year-old suspect last month finished his first semester as a PhD student in the criminal justice program at Washington State University's campus in Pullman. That's about a 15-minute drive west of Moscow, Idaho. He drove home to Pennsylvania for the holidays, accompanied by his father. The two arrived in the Commonwealth around December 17th. A white Hyundai Elantra authorities had been looking for in connection with the killings was found at Koberger's parents' house. Investigators focused on Koberger as a suspect after tracing ownership of the Elantra, which had been seen in the area of the killings, to him. This, according to two law enforcement sources briefed on the investigation. Also, his DNA matched genetic material recovered at the home where the students were slain. An FBI surveillance team tracked Koberger for 4 days before his arrest, while law enforcement worked with prosecutors to develop enough probable cause to get a warrant. The two law enforcement agencies said. Other than DNA in the car, details as to whether Koberger knew the victims or possible motive in the slayings are not publicly known. The probable cause affidavit, which contained information to justify the suspect's arrest, remains sealed until he appears in an Idaho court. When that happens, we will see a little bit more about that. Heretofore, we have not had any more information other than what has been reported in the media and on this broadcast already. He graduated with a bachelor's degree in 2020 and this year completed his Master of Arts in Criminal Justice at DeSales University in Pennsylvania. This according to a spokesperson for the university. In a post removed from Reddit after his arrest was announced, a student investigator associated with a DeSales University study named Bryan Koberger, we don't know whether it's the same guy, sought participants for a research project to understand how emotions and psychological traits influence decision-making when committing a crime. Quote, in particular, this study seeks to understand the story behind your most recent criminal offense with an emphasis on your thoughts and feelings about your experiences. Unquote. Moscow Police Department Chief James Fry said after the arrest that the investigation of the complex that it was an extensive case and it was certainly not over. The investigation, that is. Investigators are searching for pieces of evidence, including the weapon used, believed to be a long blade, fixed blade knife. We developed a clear picture over time, but be assured that the work is not done. This is just starting. Koberger is being held without bail in Pennsylvania. Latah County prosecutor Bill Thompson said last Friday that once Koberger is in Idaho, he's expected to make an initial appearance before a magistrate, and further hearings will be scheduled. So there you go. So the DNA evidence is not DNA evidence that you may indeed be familiar with. It is something called genealogical DNA. ABC News is reporting that police identified Bryan Christopher Koberger as the suspect accused of murdering 4 University of Idaho students in November through DNA that was found at the scene of the crime. And in order to make matches, not of himself personally, but of his relatives, the law enforcement officials used public genealogical DNA databases. Local police and the FBI tracked him to Pennsylvania through his vehicle. The FBI surveilled the house in the Pocono Mountains for 4 days prior to the arrest. The 28-year-old was arrested Friday morning for the murders of roommates. He's a graduate student, as we have reported. Jason Labar, the public defender, told ABC News that Bryan and his father Michael were pulled over twice in Indiana while traveling from Pullman, Washington to the Poconos, saying it was approximately an hour apart, once for speeding and once for tailgating. The pair were doing a pre-planned end of semester cross-country road trip, arriving at the family home December 13th. Exactly 1 month after the murders, they drove in the white Elantra, which is now being processed by authorities. Washington State University identified Koberger as a PhD student. Within an hour of him being identified as the suspect, more than 400 calls came to the Moscow Police Department's tip line. Koberger is set to appear in Monroe County Court to face charges, which include 4 counts of first-degree murder and burglary. It's also the first step in his extradition to Idaho, where he will have another appearance. Police have not revealed any information, including motive or further details, until he is back in Idaho, as we reported earlier. This from ABC News, by the way. Authorities announced earlier this month they were looking to speak with the driver of a 2011 to 2013 Hyundai Elantra that was spotted near the victim's house. Asked in a Friday news conference as the car had been found, the chief replied, "We have found an Elantra." Fry later told NBC News, make that ABC News, that Kohberger is believed to be the only suspect in the high-profile case. Quote, "We believe we have our guy, the one that committed these murders," he said. He does not anticipate any other arrests. Prior to attending Washington State University, Kohberger attended college at DeSales, as we have reported. As a Catholic Salesian community, we are devastated by the sensitive tragedy. Although our thoughts and prayers are with the victims' families. This, according to a statement from the university. So, the DNA. What is the story with the DNA? The DNA is genealogical DNA evidence. In other words, the DNA found at the scene not belonging to the victims was traced back through what are called public genealogical DNA databases. Those are things like 23andMe. You know, those things where you can find out about your family. If they're sold, you send your DNA in, and so on and so forth. Well, apparently, when that happens, that becomes public information. Whether or not that is, whether that's proper or not, that's a cause for debate, in my view. Because I have to be perfectly honest with you, it seems to me that that what we have here is we have a possibility of a very ugly scenario where people that it's 23andMe. I'm sorry. 23andMe, thank you. 23andMe is something that people do voluntarily, and that it would become public information to be searchable by the FBI and other police organizations is disturbing. Does it not disturb you? I mean, I'm an open book. I have not ever willingly given up my DNA. But what concerns me is that what if that doesn't matter? Is that something that is that anywhere close to comporting with the, I don't know, the Fourth Amendment of the Constitution? I mean, is that not an invasion of privacy at a level resembling art? It seems to me that it would be. What are your thoughts? 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. Someone on the chat room says, and another good reason why I'm not doing a DNA search on myself or my family. It's not that you have anything to hide. Just because you're innocent, it doesn't mean you don't have rights. The Fourth Amendment of the Constitution is plain. You will be secure in your person, your house, your papers and effects. But the thing at the beginning of that, you will be secure in your person, that is being absolutely ignored here. Absolutely ignored. And I don't know why. Probably because it hasn't been challenged yet, but it very likely will at some point. And I certainly hope that happens sooner rather than later. And while we're on that particular subject, there also is a little circumstance surrounding something called intellectual property. It seems to me that your intellectual property is yours. And as far as I know, just because you put it on Facebook doesn't necessarily mean that it can be used as evidence against you in a court of law. That seems at least reasonable to me. What are your thoughts on that? 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. Or you can join us on the chat room. I appreciate it. There is other news. USA Today reporting everything they know about the collapse of of Buffalo Bills safety DeMar Hamlin. The Buffalo Bills Cincinnati Bengals game last night was suspended after Bills safety DeMar Hamlin collapsed with 5:58 remaining in the first quarter. As of this afternoon, he remains in critical condition. The Bills announced early this morning that Hamlin suffered cardiac arrest. His heartbeat was restored on the field before he was transferred to the University of Cincinnati Medical Center for further testing and evaluation and treatment. The Bills also said that Hamlin was sedated and added this afternoon that he spent the night in the intensive care unit. We are grateful and thankful for the outpouring of support we have received thus far. A second-year player out of Pittsburgh, Hamlin tackled the Bengals wide receiver T. Higgins after a 13-yard gain. It was a nondescript play. It wasn't an especially serious collision. Hamlin stood up, wobbled a bit, and then fell immediately to the ground. An ambulance was brought onto the field. Hamlin was administered CPR for nearly 10 minutes, and according to play-by-play announcer Joe Buck, placed on a stretcher. Prior to going to the ambulance, he was being given oxygen. Everyone in our community is praying for DeMar Hamlin. The NFL Players Association said in a statement yesterday, we've been in touch with the Bills and Bengals. The only thing that matters this moment is DeMar's health and well-being. Every team in the NFL joined together in solidarity on Twitter for Hamlin, changing their respective profile pictures to a royal blue image that says, pray for DeMar. I can show you that. Let me do that for you right now so you see what we're talking about. That is the logo right there, and that is something that I have done, and I certainly hope that you have done as well. On Tuesday, today, Hamlin's family released a statement saying your generosity and compassion means the world to us. The family said that they would pass along updates on the status as soon as they have them. They also put something up on Twitter that I want to share with you as well. So let me do that. It's right there in the center. On behalf of the family, we want to express our sincere gratitude for the love and support shown to DeMar during this challenging time. We're deeply moved by the prayers, kind words, and donations from fans around the country. We also want to acknowledge the dedicated first responders and healthcare professionals at the University of Cincinnati Medical Center who have provided exceptional care to DeMar. We feel so blessed to be a part of the Buffalo Bills organization and to have their support. We also want to thank Coach Taylor and the Bengals for everything they've done. Your generosity and compassion means the world to us. Please keep DeMar in your prayers. We will release updates as soon as we have them. The cardiac arrest is something that is a 1 in a million shot. Your heart traces a path as it beats. The top part of your heart beats first, moving blood into the bottom part of your heart, your ventricles, which then contract in a sequence and push blood through your body. There is a moment in that waveform that you've seen. It is the big peak at the beginning and a small peak, and then there's a little wobble there. There are a few milliseconds on that little wave, that T wave, that if you take a strike to the heart during those few milliseconds, we're talking a thousandth of a second, 3 or 4 thousandths of a second, then your heart can be kicked into ventricular fibrillation. That is deadly. It'll kill you because suddenly those ventricles that squeeze blood through all of your arteries, your aorta, which supplies blood to every part of your body, that stops. That's what happens. So while his heart was fluttering in fibrillation, what ended up happening was the blood was not being transmitted to his brain, and he passed out. That's how that works. There's a name for it. I will try to find it because I don't want to mess it up. NFL Executive Vice President of Football Operations Troy Vincent said Bills and Bengals players were traumatized by what they witnessed on the field. That is absolutely true. These big, strong men and tears flowing down their cheeks as they saw this. Both teams were in alignment about not finishing the game last night. There was no time for the players to get warmed up, said Vincent. Frankly, the only thing we asked was that referee Sean Smith communicate with both head coaches to make sure they had the proper time inside the locker room to discuss what they felt would be the best. There is also something else, and I want to make this, I want to talk about this quickly before we go, and that is this. ESPN's coverage of this event was completely perfect. It was completely perfect. Joe Buck and his partner, Troy Aikman, were just absolutely spot on. Also, the coverage that they got from other people was also spot on. And I have to say that I could not have been more impressed with ESPN's coverage of it. It was careful. It was well done and nearly perfect, if not perfect. They were respectful and they were just plain superb. Jim Gray, who was called in to make commentary on Fox News, was first to bring up the possibility that it may have been a cardiac event, showing why he is revered as one of America's greatest sportscasters. This has been the Wells Report on an incredible day in the United States of America. We'll see you again tomorrow. Don't miss it. Okay. Thank you very much. God bless all y'all. Sorry that we spent so much time on politics, but it's something we just plain had to do. God bless you, and I'll look forward to seeing you again tomorrow. Hopefully I won't run out of really fancy clothes.